20 minutes before 7 here on the program. I must say, in 3 days' time, it's possibly one of the biggest turning points in the ANC's history. It's the 54th National Conference that kicks off in Nasrec South of Johannesburg. It's happening on Saturday. Branch General Meetings, or BGMs, and litigations are the current issues under the spotlight as the organisation counts the days to its elective conference. ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe has said the ANC intends to deal swiftly with court cases once and for all ahead of the conference. Well, joining us now is Professor Tinyiko Maluleke, a political analyst from the University of Pretoria, to talk about some of these issues. Prof, good to have you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program.
Good morning.
All right, so we talk about these BGMs, these branch general meetings, and there's basically almost a dispute in every single province in South Africa. Where does this leave the conference, the upcoming conference?
Well, I mean, you know, there is speculation that the conference might be under threat because of these many contestations, some of which have gone to court, as you rightly point out. But I'm not convinced that the conference itself is under threat yet. But it is true that we never had so many challenges before a national conference of the ANC of the kind that we have now. The numbers of challenges are simply mind-boggling. You can't compare it to Mangaung, you can't compare it to Polokwane. So there is something that's going on there. But of course it's about how many people can which province send as delegates to the national conference.
Yeah. What is it looking like so far? I mean, if we have to look at the numbers from the provinces, what are we dealing with?
Look, we still have a few question marks, but all provinces have now basically finished their general conferences. So we have the basic numbers. We know generally how many people are supposed to go. But you see, the disputed numbers could be what tilts the final outcome this way or that way. So the Bujana dispute is very important because if it is not resolved in a particular way, it could affect the outcome. It could affect the numbers of people who come from the northwest. Similarly, in Limpopo, we know that some branches have been disqualified, and that reduces the numbers of delegates that come from Limpopo. I mean, there are basically two ways of increasing the number of your delegates if you are a province. One is to have many branches, which is what is in dispute in some cases, whether all of those branches are legitimate. The other is to have very big branches, which have many delegates attached to them. And these two tactics are really what is being fought about in the courts and within the party.
Yeah. Let's have a look at some of the provinces now. You've touched on Limpopo, but let's discuss Mpumalanga's out-of-court settlement and its impact. And, of course, where it basically leaves Matthews Posa. What happened there yesterday?
Well, you know, you could argue that it was a massive victory for DD Mabuza because an out-of-court settlement means that, you know, the disgruntled people have to negotiate with him. Him and those who support him or his faction hold the power there. And I think they are marching to Nasrec victoriously. Investigations may follow, but it's all about what happens this weekend. And it seems to me that Matthew Posa may have mounted this challenge perhaps too late. And I also don't know what it means for him personally. You know, whether he will be nominated from the floor remains to be seen. So I don't know. I think it's a victory for for the faction that Didi Mabuza is leading in Mpumalanga.
Yeah, I want to just focus a little bit more on Mpumalanga, and particularly this rather frightening report that came out talking about this military having convened a task team to urgently begin formulating regulations for a state of emergency. And then, of course, you know, when you read a little bit deeper, of course, the presidency denying all of this, but you know, the questions being asked, could the preparation for a state of emergency be coming through a so-called kitchen cabinet linked to a new Mpumalanga-based centre of power? I mean, what do you make of these reports that came out on Monday? And then, of course, the presidency denying it. You know, do you think there's any truth to the state of emergency?
Well, one hopes there is no truth, because it's a frightening thing to contemplate, that 23, 24 years after democracy, we could revert to a state of emergency painted in the pictures of these documents that are circulating now, which do not seem to be owned by anyone. So we can't for sure say that there is any truth, but it is a worrying possibility, and it is something that we as a country should do everything to make sure that we avoid.
Yeah, it is frightening when you dig into the details of that, but I think we need to look much further into it. In the Free State now, let's move over to that province, because this was a big one that happened this week. I mean, we see the Ace Magashule saying over the weekend that the two presidential candidates need to find common ground. Could speculation that the ANC's provincial chairpersons have met to agree on a compromise that would avoid a bitter contest actually be true?
Well, there doesn't seem to be enough evidence to show that a compromise has been reached. But also, what is a compromise? I mean, is it a compromise when you eliminate competition? Yeah. When you arrange for a conference of this nature to be conducted in a manner that does not have competition at this stage in the history of the ANC, at this stage in the history of the country? There may have been a time in the ANC when perhaps compromises made sense of this nature. But I'm not so sure now that such a compromise, such talk of unity, sometimes one wishes to know what the purpose of the unity is more than whether unity is a good thing or a bad thing. That's not the issue. United for what? You know, so one doesn't know about the possibility of there being a compromise. I doubt. The two candidates do not seem to me like, the leading candidates at least, two people who will give way to the other. So it could still happen last minute. But I'm not sure that that's the most constructive thing for the ANC at this time.
Yeah, certainly not. But I mean, if we look at another province, we talk about the Northwest. Some members claiming that they're being purged. Could that be too far-fetched? What are your opinions there?
You know, Leanne, we have to take everything seriously. All allegations of purges, all allegations of bribes and brown envelopes. The next 72 hours is going to be crucial. And the most important person in South Africa in the next 72 hours is the ANC delegate who's going to vote at Nasrec. Yeah. And so you can imagine how much pressure and how much lobbying and how many tactics, some of which may not be clean, may be used. So we have to take every allegation seriously, but I don't think we must believe everything until we have evidence.
I want to just start wrapping up the interview, unfortunately, but because I think a lot of people, and myself, finding it very interesting to get your views and perspectives on what is happening in the run-up to this very important weekend. But let's look at the scenarios. And you've been quoted, I mean, you've said it yourself, there could be three scenarios. A, Cyril Ramaphosa, our deputy president, wins. B, Nkosazana Dlamini wins. Or C, the conference just does not go ahead. The conference looks like it's all going ahead and everything should be fine right now. Out of these three options, where do you think we're sitting?
Leanne, it's difficult to predict. I think the conference will go ahead. I don't see anything that will prevent the conference, especially if we are able to go through the accreditation process. And for all the problems that the ANC has had, there is a level of efficiency in the accreditation process that I haven't seen in many ANC conferences before. So I think we should be able to have the conference.
Okay.
Well, the question is whether...
Prof, actually, leave it there. I'm going to take a quick break. In fact, we've just been given a little bit more time to continue the interview. So this present doesn't come very easily. So this is an early Christmas present for you and I. Let's quickly take a break and we'll continue this conversation. If you want to add your voice, you're more than welcome to @MorningLive SABC. That's where you can get hold of us. Stay tuned.